this is Alex with Cavallo Home Services. We are on site at this deck project that we have just had the final inspection. So we are going to go over the building process, and we're going to go over a couple of the components of the deck, just as an overview of the different connections and spans and everything like that. So yeah, follow me. Also, I'm wearing flip-flops because we're going to walk on the top of the deck, and I didn't want to track mud. So don't think that we're unprofessional. All right, I've been wearing boots in this entire job. All right, so I don't know. I mean, is it like if you look up here, like is it bright enough on the camera? If you touch the screen, if it's black, and it'll just pop.
Yeah, you can see it. Yeah.
Okay, so let me grab my tape, because that way we can I can kind of point out what I'm talking about. So right here, this board right here, of course, is a ledger board, which is attached to the house with these are 3 5/8 inch ledger locks. These come in 3 5/8 inch. They also come in 5 inch, depending on how far back the band board is against the house. For us, we took off the siding because you can't attach a deck over the siding. And once we took off the siding, the ledger board, the band board of the house, was right there. So 3 5/8 is fine. We attached it with those, and we just do 2 of those in every joist bay. Obviously, get this thing leveled. You do have to put flashing behind this, and then we also have a drip cap flashing at the very top, which is like this gray piece up here, if you can see that. And that's what that's going to do, is that's going to stop water from getting behind the ledger board and then into the house. A lot of guys forget this, and that will cause water damage in the house, especially on a 2nd-story deck like this. They have a finished basement, so anytime water comes in, it's going to show on the drywall right away, so you do not want that. Once you have your ledger board hung, that's when we started throwing our joists on. So these joists, the ledger board and the joists are both the same measurement. They're 2 by 10. You can use a bigger sized ledger board, depending on certain situations where your sill plate is. In our case, we had a top wall plate here, which was directly underneath the ledger board. So we attached this tension tie to go right into this, the top wall plate. But if your wall plate was down here, then you might need to use a 2 by 12 ledger board to bring this down here, and so you can attach into that. And you can also block down off the side of your joist. So like, again, if you had to come down here, you have extra blocking down here, this tension tie would come down here, go into the house right there. So yeah, you run your joists. The distance between the house and our beam right here is our joist span. These joists are 2 by 10 joists spanning 13 feet. The joists are spaced 16 inches on center. So when you're spanning 16 inches on center with a 2 by 10, I believe you can run 14 foot or 14 foot 1, something like that. In this case, 13 feet, so we are way underspanned, which is good news. And then those are sitting directly on the beam. So we basically hung the perimeter of this deck, and then we put the beam on, and then we put all the field joists on. The beam right here, some people call it a beam, some people call it a girder. I just use the word beam. Is a double 2 by 12, which has the capability to span 8'6". In our case, your beam span, which is in between your 6 by 6 posts right here, is only 7 feet. So again, we are way underspanned on this deck. So joists, beam, 6 by 6 post, which goes down to our footing, concrete footing. These were about 34 inches down to the ground, where we dug a hole, and they are at the bottom of the hole. They're about 24 inches round. They get a little bit smaller as you come up. I think these are about like 21 or 22 inches square, which is fine. But between these three posts here, we did use a little over 60 or 70 bags of concrete. We had a mixer out here, mix that. And then that's going to keep the deck above the ground, and then we attach it with the 6 by 6 bracket. So the 6 by 6 post bracket gets attached. It's going to be pretty much impossible to see on video in here, but under here there is a bolt that attaches the bracket to the concrete with a 5/8 bolt, and then the 6 by 6 post goes in here and it gets nailed in. Or you can use Simpson, they make special screws, connector screws for that. So those are kind of just our basic deck components, which is, like I said, ledger board, joist, beam, posts. We're just going to keep going around. Here we have our staircase. The components of the staircase are the railing posts, which these translate all the way down to the ground into another footer. And then these pieces right here are the actual main framing of the staircase, which I'm going to refer to as a stair stringer. Some people call them stair jacks, but I call them a stair stringer. We cut 5 of them, so they'd be 12 inches on center. If you take a look at that, if you measure center to center of the board, 12 inches. You could do 16, since it's wood decking. It can span 16 inches on center, but 12 is much stronger, much better. 5 stringers. The old deck had 2. It just had the 2 outside stringers, which is pretty insane. And then, so we hung the stair stringers starting at the top using stair stringer hangers. Simpson makes those. Our upper railing post for the deck, we had it drop below to accept a stair header, which is this 2x6 board right here. And then we use the staircase header to lay out these stair stringers, 12 inches on center. Through bolted the header here, attached with lag screws into this little scab piece here, and kind down. Then I also just add this scab piece here and attach this with lag screws, just to add some strength. If one of these stringers were to fail, let's say, it can't fall straight down because then it's being attached to the 2 stringers right next to it. So it physically cannot fall. Your railing posts translate down into the ground. We have a double 2x10 beam here that we cut on an angle, which is the same angle as the staircase, about 35 degrees, rip down. And then we through bolt that to the post. You cannot through bolt on an actual deck post itself. So on these posts right here, you're not allowed to through bolt. So the connection here is, if you look at it from the side, we notched these posts right here, and then we attached it with 2 through bolts here. So it's bearing 100% bearing on the 6x6 post. So here, this connection obviously is different because of this beam. This double beam, there's nothing under it. This is a shear, so it's called a shear load because the total weight of this is shear on these 2 bolts. The reason you can do it on the stairs is because it's under far less weight, because I have the stair stringer hangers here. I have this, it's divided, the load here and here. So here it's not an issue. On the deck itself, you cannot do that. So just be aware of that. So what else we got? We got stair stringer hangers, stair header, we got posts. We'll take a walk up to the top and go over a couple components. So for the railings, the actual rails itself, which I call this top and bottom rail. And then I call these, some people use the word pickets interchangeably with the word baluster. So picket or baluster, I say both. And then this is your railing top board, which we use just another deck board. And then right here is your ADA handrail required by code, graspable right here. So you can actually wrap your hand around. They say this is not good enough to wrap your hand around, which I agree, because if you were to slip on the staircase or need assistance going up the staircase, it is, especially if you have pretty big hands, but if you have smaller hands, you really would not be able to grab this very well. So that's why this board is here, and we lagged that into this. So that is extremely strong. It cannot move. Our decking, 5/4 decking. Let me just come down right here so you can see this. So 5/4 deck boards, pressure treated, and those are attached with Simpson deck drive 2.5-inch screws. That way you have just the 1 inch of the decking, and then you're all the way 1.5 inches into the framing. And then your riser board, let me look at that from the side actually. Let's come around real quick. The riser is just a 1x6. So 3/4 of an inch. It's just a finish board that is just right there. You want to have a closed riser. If you have no riser, it can be a trip hazard, so you definitely want to have that. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the way these boards are oriented. It does matter the way the grain is. So as you can see, the grain right now in all of these boards is like this. I call it rainbow because it's shaped like a rainbow. If this were to be flipped upside down, it would be shaped like this, which I call smile. Smile is bad, rainbow is good. And the reason being, because this is wood, these boards are gonna cup over time, slightly. They're gonna kind of go like this. And if they're cupped in a smile, then one, it can become a trip hazard in some extreme cases, but in the more basic cases, when these do cup, then you're gonna have water sitting in those deck boards. So here, the deck board will cup the opposite way, water will roll off, won't have any issues. So all our deck boards are gonna be rainbow, not smile. Here, our balusters, if you wanna come in right here, are attached with 2 nails and 1 screw. The 2 nails where we just tacked it in, and then the screw holds it, top and bottom. So really it's 4 nails and 2 screws per baluster. They're very strong. That is not gonna go anywhere. At the top, same thing, wood decking, 5/4. Here we have, this deck is 18 feet wide, and I used a perpendicular breaker board in here. The reason we did that, you can get 20-foot decking. It's very hard to find 20-foot decking that is very straight because of the length. Of course, it's cut from a tree, and it's from a pine tree specifically. Very, it gets a little weird. So we use 10-foot boards, and then a breaker board in the middle. Keeps it clean, and you're gonna find much straighter boards. You can see these boards are really, really straight. A couple things about the installation of this decking. We installed this decking with no spacing. These boards are as tight as we could possibly make them. There are some spacing just from the boards, again, being a little bit curved, just the nature of the wood, but in general, we put these in tight. The reason being, when these boards are pressure treated, they are absolutely soaked and injected with water and chemicals, and basically that's gonna mean that they're swollen. So as this gets in the sun in a couple months, they are gonna shrink, and they're gonna develop a gapping naturally. So you don't need to worry about putting these in with a spacing. If you do put a spacing in, let's say you put a 1/8 inch spacing, which is a tight spacing, you're gonna have massive gaps in 3 months. So make sure if you use wood decking, definitely install those tight, or that's gonna be an issue later on. And then again, these are attached with Simpson deck drive 2.5 inch screws. We use chalk line. This will come off with either a power wash, which we can do at the end of the job, which is right now. We just passed final inspection, so I want to take this video today. But the homeowner's going to stain the whole thing, so it's really not an issue, but it's just chalk. Some guys use flour. They put white flour in the chalk line because then it just comes right off, but the chalk comes right off too. So we're good to go there. And then same thing, deck board on top. One thing you may notice about this deck is the balusters compared to the neighbors' decks are backwards, because these balusters are on the inside of the railing instead of, as you can see on the neighbors, they're on the outside. In my mind, this is the only deck in this neighborhood that's done correctly, and the reason I put the balusters on the inside is because they can't push out. So if you have a kid or something, kick this, like over here, like this baluster could pop out. This one cannot pop out because there's a 2x4 behind it. The 2x4 rail is attached to the 4x4 post with a 4-inch screw, 2 4-inch screws, 2 or 3 actually. Let me see how many we did. Yeah, we did 3 4-inch screws into the 4x4 post, and then the deck screws from the top board are gonna hold that rail in. So no way that thing can move. We are good to go. I did tell the homeowner they're going to stain this too. It also makes it easier to stain, so they can get their paintbrush in here. And then if they wanted to, they could even install another 2x4 across this and tow it into the 4x4 post just to cover these nail holes. If they so choose, they don't have to, but that is going to be much stronger. So, and then of course, some guys start their decking against the house and work out. You can do that. But we just start from the edge and work in, and then our last board, we just rip it down to whatever size we may need to rip it down to, and it turns out pretty nice. So that's real nice. Yeah, this is the top of the deck. Pretty self-explanatory as far as that goes. And then we're gonna show you some more connection stuff down below. So let's take a look at that. So a couple deck details that are important to discuss is this bracing right here. This is technically above code. Code does not require this, but when you have a deck that's this tall and it's sitting on top of concrete instead of being, because you could put these posts down in the ground and encase it in concrete, it does have some lateral stability because you have wood decking that's going to hold all the joists together. So you have some lateral stability, which is side to side. But again, being such a high deck, it's really better to have more. So we put these braces on, which is post to beam and attached with lag screws, so that that's going to add a ton more stability side to side. The other thing that adds stability is these boards right here that go diagonally across the entire deck, which I call K bracing, because when you put the house in, it looks like the letter K, and that also helps a ton with lateral stability side to side. We just nail that, shoot that up into the joist. The other thing, you saw the perpendicular deck board on the top of the deck. That has to be accommodated by this framing in here if you want to look like directly under this. Here's our two joists that are 5.5 inches apart, plus a 2x6 frame. And that's going to accept your perpendicular breaker board in the middle. One thing this needs, when you ever do flat blocking, you can kind of see the edge of it up here, which is flashing. If you ever have flat blocking, you need to flash it because water will sit there and it will rot that out within probably 2 years. Like, it's very, very quick to rot. It's an area that catches water really badly. So make sure you're flashing any flat blocking. Field joists, I really don't use joist tape. I don't find it to be necessary, but definitely on flat blocking like that. What else do we have as far as our connections? So yeah, the inspector, like I said, they're going to look for connections. We talked about these two. These are 1/2-inch through bolts going through the beam into the post, and then attached with a nut and a washer. Also a washer on the front, so that sandwiches it, puts it in tight. And I also added a 5-inch ledger lock also to attach that. Joist to beam connection is going to be these. These are called hurricane ties. We toenailed it's going to be hard to see, but we did toenail the joists down into the beam with a nail gun, but then we also come back and attach these hurricane ties to the beam. And the other thing the inspector is going to look for on a deck like this is going to be tension ties. There's two types of tension ties, and they're both called tension ties. But one of them is called a deck tension tie, and the other one is called a railing tension tie. A good example for this is just right here. Like I said, I already kind of talked about this. Basically, what the inspection, or the theory behind these bolts is it wants to make sure the deck can't disconnect or pull away from the house. So let's say you were having a party and everybody is standing right against the house and they run as fast as they can and stop right at the edge of the deck, and it pulls the deck. That is physically not possible because of these tension ties, at least according to Anne Arundel County's Department of Inspections and Permits. So that's why we attach 4 of these per deck. I usually just space them pretty evenly, so you can see we have those there. And also because we went through the siding, I siliconed that just so water wouldn't get in there. Even though it's pretty unlikely that it would anyway, because it's right below the ledger board, but I did want to make sure we siliconed that. And then the other thing we have is our railing tension ties. So 4x4 post comes down through the deck. This is, let me show you this one. This one got a little weird because we're in the corner, but we put this block on first and we attach this tension tie. So that just attaches to the bolt where you put the post in, and that's going to also assist with stopping the tension tie. The tension tie is going to stop the post from pulling away from the house. So like if you were to push that away from the house, it really can't do it because you have the tension tie. And then once that's in, then we add a second. So we have double blocking for our 4x4 post. It's going to make it super, super strong. Anytime you have a 4x4 post on your outside rim joist on the side of the deck, that is a weak spot. So make sure you're putting in extra blocking for that. When you're on the front of the deck like this, you already have a ton of inherent strength because you have this connection here where it's attached. If you want to look under this, you can kind of see the way this is attached. We always put a block behind the 4x4 because if this were to want to come out, push out this way, let me just hit you in the face with that. That's going to be much more difficult with this block right here. And then we also have a tension tie. So we bolted through that block and attached a tension tie. It is physically not possible for that post to go out. So those are the two types of tension ties. And then the other thing I want to talk about is the way you might have to kind of zoom in up here. It's a little bit dark, but the way we put this in right here, because you can't put a joist hanger on the corner of the deck, we just used a heavy angle on a right angle and put that in. So there's a lot going on in this corner with this heavy right angle, bolted through the post. I had to put a tension tie out here because there's no way I could have fit one in here because I couldn't pre-drill such a long bolt and get this bolt in here. I couldn't drill this side where I couldn't drill it from the house on this side. So we just used a small drill bit, drilled a hole there, put that bolt in there, tension tie in there. Then the house tension tie right here, and joist hanger, joist, ledger board, ledger locks. A lot going on in the corners. So that's basically just, you know, the different deck components in the process. That's everything the inspector looks for. They're going to be looking for all the hardware. They're going to be looking to make sure all your nail holes are filled. On your joist hangers, they're going to be looking just like I said, tension ties, K-bracing. That's all code stuff. Yeah, that's about it. So yeah, the building process, like I said, we put the ledger board on first, hung the perimeter of the deck, hung the beam, and then we put all the joists on. Once all the joists were on, then we put our 6x6 posts in. Once the 6x6 posts were supporting the deck, put all the decking on, started working on the railing while had another couple guys working on the staircase, cut those stringers, put those on, and then while they were doing railings, we were out here doing the stairs. And then we kind of worked our way down and worked our way out, and that was it. So as far as the timing for a project like this, we had to have a footing inspection, so that kind of delays things because it's an extra inspection. So it took us a day to get the materials here. Then we had to come and dig. We didn't demo this deck, so that would have added another day. We had to come and dig, and then the footing inspection was the next day. Footing inspection passed, and then we poured this concrete. I wanted to give the concrete an extra day to set up, so we went to another job for that next day, and then we came back and did. So basically, once there was nothing here except for these footers, we did the entire thing in 2 days. So framing and decking and everything in 2 days. A bit of a whirlwind, but yeah. So all in all, about a week, maybe 6 days if you have demo. If you have an inspection delay, 6 or 7 working days. But of actual building, like 3 or 4 days is how long this one took. And this one was, including the staircase, about 330 square feet, which is a pretty average size for most houses. Yeah, that's about it. That's pretty much everything I wanted to go over. And oh yeah, the only other last thing I guess would be that the inspector just wants to see that every post is attached with a minimum of 2 bolts. So 1 bolt here, here's 2 more bolts. The railing posts on the deck itself, you can just look to the front right here. Obviously attached right here, 2 bolts. But yeah, as long as they see 2 bolts, 1/2-inch bolts, and galvanized, you're going to be good to go. That's about it. A lot of details, a lot of things the inspector looks for, a lot of leveling, a lot of wood. These wood decks, I like the look. A lot of people are doing composite now, which I also like, but to me, old school wood deck, very, very nice. Turned out real nice. Homeowner's happy. And yeah, man, that's going to be it. So we're on to the next one. And yeah, we'll see you next time.